the hidden side of history, love, family, and daily life in the Roman Empire. Opening words. Forget the emperors, forget the armies, forget the marble thrones for tonight. There is another Rome hidden just beneath that famous, noisy one. It lived in small kitchens, quiet gardens, and modest, sunlit courtyards. It lived in the space between two people falling in love slowly over many years. Tonight, we are not going to study an empire. We are going to visit a home. We will sit at a family table, warm bread between us, wine mixed gently with water. We will listen to a mother humming while she weaves, and a father teaching his son a trade. We will read a letter a soldier once wrote to a wife he missed terribly. We will watch a bride dressed in white, a knot tied carefully at her waist. None of this requires effort from you, only your breathing, slow and even. There are no names to memorize tonight, and no dates worth holding onto. If a detail slips past you, let it go. The feeling is what matters most. Historians have spent lifetimes gathering fragments of this ordinary human Rome. Letters, tombstones, broken pottery, and old graffiti still whisper its secrets. From these small fragments, a warm and familiar picture slowly comes into focus. Roman families loved, worried, and hoped for tomorrow much as we still do. They wondered if their children were well and if the harvest would be kind. They wondered if love would last and if tonight's meal would be enough. 6 short acts make up tonight's journey, moving from home, toward love, toward rest. First home, then love, then the small business of daily life. After that, the harder feelings, family, loss, and quiet friendship. Then night falls slowly and we speak only of sleep and dreams and stillness. We begin now at home in a small house beside a slow and ancient river. This is their story told slowly so that it might carry you toward sleep. Let your shoulders drop, let your eyes soften, and let old Rome begin. ACT1 Home. A city on 7 quiet hills. Long before Rome ruled an empire, it was only a small farming settlement. The river Tiber moved past reed banks, cattle pens, and simple wooden huts. Shepherds and farmers gathered on 7 low hills, seeking water and safety nearby. Over generations, these scattered huts slowly grew into a single shared community. Families lived close to their animals and fields, tending a small household hearth. A fire was kept burning through the night, believed to hold the spirit of the home. Historians still argue over the earliest details since so much remains uncertain. What seems clear is that Rome grew slowly, through farming, trade, and cooperation. As the years passed, timber huts gave way to modest stone and brick houses. A market grew beside the riverbank, filled with familiar faces and easy bargaining. Pottery, tools, and unfamiliar goods arrived along the river, carried by small boats. Neighbors knew each other by name, by trade, and by the sound of their footsteps. Public wells and small shrines became natural gathering points for daily life. Streets widened slowly, hill by hill, following the rhythm of a growing city. A traveler arriving from a nearby village might pause simply to watch the river traffic. He would see fishermen mending nets and children chasing each other along the bank. Long before marble temples rose above the rooftops, Rome was simply a home. It was a place of tired hands, warm bread, and quiet evenings after long days. Before we speak of senators or soldiers, we must understand this modest beginning. This humble start holds the true root of everything that came afterward. A traveler passing through today would hardly recognize this early scattering of huts. Yet the same hills, the same bend in the river, would still feel oddly familiar. It is worth remembering that every great city begins this way, small and unnoticed. Rome's true beginning was not a single day, but thousands of ordinary mornings. Somewhere in one of those huts, a mother stirred a pot over a low flame. Somewhere else, a young boy learned to mend a fishing net beside his father. None of them could have known what their small settlement would one day become. Perhaps it is better that they did not and simply lived their ordinary day. The 7 hills themselves would eventually give their names to whole neighborhoods. Even today, a visitor can trace their gentle slopes beneath the later stone. This layering of centuries, one atop another, is itself a kind of quiet history. Every ordinary Roman morning we describe tonight rests on this same patient ground. Keep that image nearby as we step now through the front door of a Roman home. The Roman household and its daily rhythm. Most people in the Roman world lived nowhere near a grand villa. They lived in modest rooms, sometimes shared with several family members at once. In the city, families crowded into tall apartment buildings called insulae. In the countryside, homes were simpler, built from stone, timber, and sun-dried brick. Mornings began early, with washing, dressing, and a light meal eaten without fuss. The father of the household, the paterfamilias, held formal authority over the home. Yet daily life depended, hour by hour, on the steady labor of the mother. She organized meals, managed the household stores, and guided the younger children. Grandparents often lived close by, offering patience and an extra pair of hands. Children moved easily between generations, learning manners and small household customs. Rooms opened onto a shared courtyard, and life unfolded gently in view of others. Privacy, in the way we understand it today, barely existed in a Roman home. Even so, small tender moments still found their own private corner of the day. A husband and wife might sit together as the evening slowly settled around them. They shared a simple meal, talking in low voices about the small events of the day. Nearby, a lamp flickered, and a cat curled itself against the warmth of the hearth. Somewhere in the house, a child's breathing had already slowed into sleep. Water had to be carried, bread had to be baked, and children had to be fed. Chores repeated endlessly, day after day, in a rhythm the whole family understood. This unremarkable rhythm, repeated daily, formed the true foundation of family life. Before we speak of empire, we must first understand this ordinary devotion. Neighbors might hear these sounds through thin walls and think nothing of it. It was simply the sound of a family living its life, one ordinary hour at a time. A visitor from another household might drop by, welcomed without much ceremony. Such visits were brief, warm, and woven easily into the rhythm of the day. A neighbor might arrive simply to borrow a little oil and stay to talk a while. These small interruptions rarely felt like interruptions at all, only welcome company. By evening, the household had usually seen a dozen small, quiet exchanges like this. Community, more than any wall or gate, held these Roman neighborhoods together. A household rarely thought of itself as separate from the street outside its door. The line between one family's home and another's felt soft, almost unnecessary. This closeness could feel crowded at times, yet it rarely felt lonely. Loneliness, in fact, was one hardship most ordinary Romans simply never had to face. Even a small, crowded apartment carried the constant reassurance of nearby, familiar voices. A child falling asleep could hear parents talking softly through the thin wall nearby. That sound alone, however faint, often meant more than any words within it. It simply meant that the family, whole and present, was still close by. Childhood under the Roman sky. In the Roman world, a new birth was met with a careful mixture of hope and caution. Illness among infants was sadly common, so every safe birth was quietly treasured. Once welcomed into the family, a child received a small protective charm called a bulla. It was worn close to the chest, believed to guard the wearer from harm. Small toys have survived in old graves, clay animals, dolls, and simple wooden balls. Children played in courtyards and alleys, loosely watched by an older sibling or aunt. Games of chasing, hiding, and tossing pebbles filled long, easy afternoons. A ball made of stitched leather stuffed with feathers was a common treasured toy. As children grew, small chores slowly became part of their daily routine. Girls often learned household skills early, guided by mothers and older sisters. Boys sometimes followed their fathers to a workshop, a farm, or the market. By early evening, tired children were washed and settled near the family hearth. Storytelling was an important part of Roman childhood, told by lamplight or firelight. Elders shared old family tales, passing down simple lessons about kindness and courage. Discipline certainly existed, yet many surviving letters describe real affection too. A father might carry a sleepy child on his shoulders after a long day outside. A tomb inscription might grieve, in plain and aching words, a child who died too young. These small human details remind us that Roman families loved deeply, as we do. Beneath the formal structure of their world, childhood remained tender and precious. A mother might sing a simple, familiar tune to settle a fussy infant at dusk. Siblings often shared a single sleeping space, comforted by each other's steady breathing. An older child might be given small responsibility for a younger one during the day. This early trust between siblings often lasted well into their adult lives. Two brothers, grown and with families of their own, might still visit weekly. A sister might still turn to an older sibling first, out of long habit. These bonds, formed in a shared childhood room, rarely faded with age. They remained quietly, one of the steadiest relationships in a Roman life. An older sister might braid a younger one's hair before a festival without being asked. A younger brother might save the best piece of fruit for an older sibling returning tired. These small, unspoken exchanges built a trust that rarely needed explaining. It simply existed, steady and reliable in the background of an ordinary childhood. Learning to read, learning to live. Education in Rome varied greatly, shaped by a family's wealth and location. Wealthier children were often taught at home by a private tutor, the pedagogus. He guided reading, writing, counting, and lessons in proper daily behavior. Poorer children sometimes attended a small neighborhood school in a rented room. Lessons began early, by the low light of an oil lamp before the sun rose fully. Students practiced their letters on wax tablets, smoothing them clean to begin again. Reading lessons often used simple stories, chosen for their small, gentle moral lessons. Counting was taught with pebbles and a wooden board, repeated patiently until it settled. Girls from wealthier families sometimes received a similar early education to their brothers. As girls grew older, their lessons often turned toward household management instead. Let us imagine one particular child's very first day at such a school. His mother helps him dress, smoothing the front of his simple woolen tunic. She packs a small tablet, a stylus, and a modest morning meal wrapped in cloth. Together they walk through streets still soft with early light, saying little. Other children wait outside the door, some confident, others clearly nervous like him. The teacher greets them kindly, guiding each child toward a low wooden seat. He traces his letters carefully, tongue slightly pressed in quiet concentration. At midday, the children share a short pause, eating quietly in the shade. By day's end, his hand aches faintly, though pride outweighs the discomfort entirely. His mother waits outside, smiling as he runs to tell her every small detail. That evening, he practices his letters once more, guided by his father's patient hand. Learning, whether formal or simple, shaped how children understood duty and family. It prepared them not for grand office, but for a steady, responsible life at home. Not every family could afford even this modest education for their children. Many children instead learned entirely through watching and helping at home. This informal learning, though unrecorded, was every bit as valuable and thorough. A skill learned at a parent's side often lasted an entire lifetime. A daughter watching her mother weave absorbed the rhythm before she understood the technique. Years later, her own hands would move the same way, almost without thinking. This quiet transfer of skill, repeated across generations, needed no formal classroom at all. It happened simply, patiently, in the corner of an ordinary room. No one announced these lessons, and no one graded them at the end of the day. Yet by the time a child reached adulthood, they had absorbed an entire craft. This quiet, unhurried method of teaching shaped nearly every trade in the empire. Formal schooling mattered, but this daily apprenticeship at home mattered just as much. Between the two, Most Roman children eventually learned everything they truly needed for life. Neither kind of learning asked for haste. Both simply asked for steady, repeated attention. The gods who watched over Roman hearths. Faith in Rome touched nearly every part of ordinary household life. Each home kept a small shrine, the lararium, honoring the family's guardian spirits. The Lares were household spirits believed to watch over the family and its home. Small statues stood near the hearth, greeted quietly at the start of each day. The Penates guarded the food stores, keeping the family fed through lean seasons. Vesta, goddess of the hearth, mattered deeply in both public and private worship. A small flame kept alive symbolized the family's continued warmth and protection. Meals often began with a small offering, a pinch of food set near the shrine. Births, marriages, and safe homecomings were marked with a short household prayer. Children learned these prayers early, repeating them at their parents' side. A grandmother might guide a small child's hands through the same familiar words. Ancestors, too, were honored, remembered through small offerings and a few spoken words. Death did not end a person's place in the family, only changed its shape. Ancestral spirits were believed to remain close, still watching over their descendants. This closeness between the living and the departed shaped how Romans viewed family itself. Faith, like daily life, was unhurried and woven quietly into ordinary routine. It reminded families that even the most ordinary day carried a small, sacred rhythm. A traveler leaving home might pause briefly at the shrine before setting out. This small pause, barely a moment, was believed to carry real, quiet protection. Even the busiest household found time for this brief, familiar ritual. Faith, in this way, moved gently through nearly every part of the day. A family did not need a temple to feel that they were being watched over. Their own small hearth carried that same sense of presence and quiet protection. This made faith feel less like a formal duty and more like a comfort. It was simply part of the furniture of daily life, familiar and unremarkable. A child might greet the household shrine each morning the same way they greeted a grandparent. It was simply there, expected, part of the quiet architecture of the home. No one needed to explain its importance. It was simply understood from an early age. Faith, learned this way, felt less like belief and more like breathing. Act 2. Love. The meaning of marriage in Roman life. Marriage in ancient Rome was treated as a serious foundation of family and society. It joined not only two people, but two households, two names, two futures. Families often arranged marriages, especially among the wealthy, with practical goals in mind. Yet real affection, respect, and companionship still grew inside many of these unions. A young woman might marry in her mid to late teenage years, guided by her family. Men typically married a little later, once they had found some financial footing. Marriage ceremonies varied, though most included a formal agreement and a few witnesses. The bride wore a simple white tunic, tied at the waist with a special knot. This was the knot of Hercules, believed to bring protection and good fortune. A soft orange veil marked the beginning of her new life and new household. Friends and family gathered, offering blessings, songs, and warm words of encouragement. Afterward, the bride was led to her new husband's home in a small procession. Torchlight guided the way, and neighbors called out warm, familiar blessings as they passed. Though festive, this walk often carried a tender, private sense of new responsibility. In many marriages, a wife kept legal control over her own property and inheritance. This gave some Roman women more independence than many later societies allowed. Marriage was expected to produce children, seen as essential to the family's future. Yet letters and tombstones alike reveal genuine warmth between many husbands and wives. One inscription simply calls a wife faithful, cherished, and deeply, deeply missed. Beneath its formal legal shape, Roman marriage often held real partnership and warmth. A couple's first year together often meant learning each other's small habits. Small disagreements were expected, settled quietly within the privacy of the home. Over time, most couples settled into a rhythm that suited them both. This quiet adjustment, rarely written about, formed the true daily texture of marriage. A husband might learn, slowly, exactly how his wife preferred her bread baked. A wife might learn which chair he favored and leave it free for him each evening. These tiny accommodations, repeated for years, quietly became a private language between them. No poem describes this kind of love, yet it may be the truest kind. It shows itself in small, repeated acts, rather than in any single grand gesture. A shared laugh over a burnt loaf, a hand offered on a difficult morning. These moments rarely made it into any surviving letter or inscription, yet they were, most likely, the true substance of countless Roman marriages. Even arranged marriages, given enough time, often settled into real, quiet affection. A couple who began as near strangers might, after years, become each other's closest confidant. This slow growth of love, rather than an initial spark, was the more common Roman story. It suggests that love, patiently built, can be just as real as love found suddenly. Perhaps this is the quietest lesson Roman marriage still offers us tonight. Love does not need to arrive all at once to be considered real and lasting. Sometimes it simply arrives slowly, one ordinary shared evening at a time. Words of love, written and whispered. Roman poets wrote openly about love, longing, and the ache of missing someone. Their words, though ancient, describe feelings that still feel close and familiar. Some poems captured the simple pleasure of an evening beside a warm fire. Others expressed the quiet sorrow of waiting for a traveler to come home safely. Love was often compared to gentle natural things: moonlight, calm water, low wind. Ordinary Romans expressed affection too, through short letters sent across the empire. These letters often opened with a warm wish for good health and easy days. A husband away on business might write of missing his wife's familiar company. A wife might reply, describing small household news and her hope for his return. Graffiti scratched into old plaster sometimes preserved a simple line of affection. One faded message reads only, "I think of you often and wish you well." Another, found near a doorway, simply names two lovers and the date they met. These small, ordinary words remind us that love needed no grand display. Small gifts, ribbons, perfumed oils, were common and treasured tokens of affection. Wealthier couples exchanged finely carved rings, engraved with a private message. Poorer couples expressed love through effort, shared work, and daily companionship. Public affection stayed modest, yet private tenderness clearly lived inside these homes. Married couples appear on some tombstones holding hands, side by side forever. That small carved gesture has quietly outlasted the empire that made it. Love, it seems, needed no monument at all, only patience and steady devotion. A husband returning from a journey might bring home a small, thoughtful trinket. His wife might keep it carefully, long after its original purpose was forgotten. Such small objects, kept for decades, often carried an entire private history. They remind us that affection rarely needed grand words to feel deeply real. A wife might wear a simple ring every single day for the rest of her life. Long after her husband had passed, she still turned it gently on her finger. Such a small, private habit said more than any lengthy, formal eulogy could. Love, once truly settled, rarely needed to announce itself at all. It simply appeared in small daily habits, a saved portion of dinner, a warm seat by the fire. These quiet gestures, repeated for years, spoke more clearly than any grand declaration. A visitor to the home might not even notice them, so ordinary did they seem. Yet within the family, everyone understood exactly what they meant: the standing of women within the home. Roman women held a complex place, shaped by law, custom, and personal circumstance. Legally, a woman often remained under the guardianship of a father or husband. Yet in daily practice, many women managed real responsibility inside their own homes. A Roman matron organized meals, supervised servants, and guided her children's upbringing. Wealthier women sometimes managed family finances, property, and small business interests. Inscriptions describe women running shops, workshops, and modest trading businesses alone. Women could own property, inherit wealth, and in some periods seek a divorce. This degree of independence surprised many later observers unfamiliar with Roman law. A respected matron was praised for wisdom, modesty, and steady household leadership. Public life remained largely closed to women, yet influence still moved through private rooms. A wealthy woman might quietly shape a family decision through calm, careful counsel. Ordinary women worked as bakers, weavers, midwives, and traders across the city. Midwives especially held a trusted, deeply respected place within their communities. Religious life offered women meaningful roles too, especially inside the home. A mother often led the daily prayers at the household shrine each morning. The Vestal Virgins, tending Rome's sacred flame, held rare and honored public status. These women combined religious duty with unusual personal independence and respect. Roman womanhood, though shaped by real restriction, was never simply passive or silent. Behind the formal law, countless women quietly shaped their family's daily life. A daughter often learned her mother's quiet authority simply by watching her. This knowledge passed easily from one generation of women to the next. Neighbors frequently turned to an experienced matron for calm, practical advice. Her opinion, though informal, often carried real weight within the community. Younger wives often visited her simply to ask how she managed a difficult season. She would answer plainly, drawing on decades of quiet, accumulated household experience. This informal network of women, rarely recorded, likely held entire neighborhoods together. Their wisdom passed hand to hand, much like a favorite recipe or remedy. A young bride new to a neighborhood often found her footing through these older women. Within a season or two, she too would have advice worth sharing with someone newer still. This quiet cycle of mentorship repeated endlessly, rarely noticed, always essential. It formed one of the truest, least visible institutions of Roman daily life. No official title recognized it and no law required it, yet it held real power. Rome's daily order rested on countless such systems, informal, unwritten, and entirely dependable. A letter to a daughter. Let us imagine, softly, a mother writing to her daughter far away. A small lamp burns beside her, casting warm light across the wax tablet. She begins simply, wishing her daughter good health and easy, peaceful days. She describes small household news, comforting in its ordinary familiarity. The garden, she writes, is blooming again, much as it did last spring. The household cat still sleeps in its usual place near the warm hearth. She asks after her daughter's husband, hoping he remains well and steady. She recalls a small memory, her daughter's laughter during a childhood festival. The letter carries no urgency, only warmth and quiet maternal love. She reminds her daughter to rest and not to worry more than she must. She mentions a small gift already prepared, waiting to be sent along soon. She writes that the neighbor's new baby is healthy and sends her love to him too. Her handwriting slows near the end, reluctant to close this small conversation. She signs simply, with love, as she has done in countless letters before. The tablet is wrapped carefully, ready for its long journey by messenger. She sets it aside, already imagining her daughter's happy, familiar reply. This simple letter, though ordinary, carries a deep and lasting maternal affection. Such letters, though centuries old, still feel remarkably close and warm. Somewhere, a daughter would eventually receive this letter and read it slowly. She might smile at the mention of the cat, still curled by that same hearth. She would write back soon, in her own hand with her own small news. This quiet exchange, repeated for years, was its own steady form of love. A daughter kept every letter her mother ever sent, tied together with plain string. Decades later, she would still read them occasionally, on a quiet evening alone. Her mother's voice, still steady and familiar, seem to rise gently from the old wax. Some bonds, it seems, only grow stronger with distance and passing time. A daughter, now grown with children of her own, might finally understand her mother fully. The small worries once found tiresome now seemed, in hindsight, simply loving. This late understanding between mother and daughter is its own quiet kind of gift. It often arrives only once a woman becomes a mother herself. Perhaps that is why so many of these old letters read the same, across the centuries. A mother's small worries, a daughter's gentle reassurance, repeated endlessly through history. Nothing about this exchange has truly changed, only the material the words are written on. Wax and papyrus have become paper and screens, yet the same quiet care remains. A mother anywhere in any century still wants to know that her child is safe and well fed. That simple wish, written slowly by lamplight, has never once gone out of fashion. Growing old together. Long marriages were regarded with quiet admiration throughout Roman society. Couples who stayed together for decades were praised for loyalty and patience. Some tombstones celebrate marriages lasting 40, 50, even more years together. These inscriptions describe a shared life built on steady, familiar companionship. Growing old together meant sharing both hardship and slowly gathered comfort. Couples supported one another through illness, loss, and the changes that age brings. Daily routines stayed familiar, offering comfort through long shared habits. Evenings together often meant simple conversation and easy, comfortable silence. Grandchildren brought fresh joy, softening the harder edges of growing older. Elderly couples often guided younger relatives with calm, practiced wisdom. Roman writers sometimes reflected warmly on the comfort of long companionship. They described trust and familiarity as more valuable than youthful passion alone. A long shared life let couples understand each other deeply, without needing many words. A shared glance, a light touch, carried the weight of many accumulated years. Aging together was seen not as decline, but as closeness that had been earned. An old husband might still reach for his wife's hand out of pure, plain habit. Families took comfort in simply witnessing this steady, lasting devotion between elders. Beneath formal Roman custom, this quiet devotion remained genuinely, deeply human. Love, sustained over decades, became its own quiet and lasting achievement. Younger couples in the neighborhood often watched such elders with quiet hope. They wondered if their own marriage might someday feel this easy, this settled. An elderly wife might simply say that love, given time, becomes comfortable. That comfort, she would add, is worth more than any early fleeting passion. She would say this while resting her hand lightly on her husband's shoulder. He would simply nod, too settled in the moment to need any reply. Their neighbors often remarked that the two seemed to move as a single, quiet pair. Perhaps that more than anything is what a long marriage truly becomes. Not a single grand romance, but thousands of small, quietly chosen ordinary days. Chosen again and again, morning after morning, until choosing simply became who they were. ACT3 Daily Life. Morning markets and the sounds of the city. Roman cities woke early, in the soft gray light before full sunrise. Bakers lit their ovens before dawn, filling the streets with the smell of warm bread. Vendors called out prices in a cheerful, familiar rhythm from their crowded stalls. Fresh vegetables, olives, cheese, and fish arrived early from nearby farms and coastal towns. Shoppers moved between stalls, greeting familiar faces and trading small morning news. Children sometimes ran small errands, carrying a basket of bread or fresh produce home. Coins passed between hands, alongside a friendly, well-practiced haggling over price. Markets were more than trade. They were the center of daily conversation. Neighbors shared news and small kindnesses while waiting together in line. The forum at the city's heart hummed with business, gossip, and easy gathering. Craftsmen displayed their goods nearby: pottery, sandals, tools, and woven cloth. Public notices, painted on a nearby wall, announced games, sales, and local news. Street performers sometimes played a soft tune, adding rhythm to the morning crowd. An old woman sold small bunches of herbs from a basket at her feet. By midday, the busiest stalls quieted as families returned home for their meal. Shops closed briefly during the warmest hours, allowing rest before the afternoon continued. This daily rhythm, familiar and unhurried, shaped the pulse of ordinary Roman life. It was where strangers became familiar faces, and daily needs met daily community. This simple exchange of goods and words formed the true heartbeat of the city. A regular customer might be greeted by name and asked after their family. Such small recognitions, repeated daily, built real trust between strangers over time. By the day's end, most vendors knew their neighborhood better than any map could show. This quiet familiarity was the true currency of a Roman market, beyond any coin. An elderly vendor might set aside the best fruit for a regular, trusted customer. A young mother might be given a little extra bread, quietly, without being asked. These small kindnesses were rarely spoken of, yet everyone understood their value. The market, in this way, functioned as much on trust as it did on trade. By the time the sun stood high overhead, most of the day's real business was already done. The remaining hours belonged to rest, to family, and to the slower pace of the afternoon. Even the busiest merchant understood that a market, like a person, needed its own quiet hours. Trade paused, and the city breathed a little slower until the cool of evening returned. Bread, wine, and the comfort of a shared table. Food held real importance in Roman life, both for nourishment and connection. Bread formed the foundation of most meals, eaten by rich and poor alike. Grain was ground into flour, then baked into round, simple loaves each morning. Olive oil, used for cooking and for lamps, sat in nearly every kitchen. Wine, usually mixed with water, accompanied most meals across the entire empire. Vegetables such as lentils, beans, and cabbage formed the base of everyday cooking. Meat was less common for ordinary families, saved mostly for festivals. Fish, near coastal towns, offered an affordable and reliable source of protein. Cheese, made from goat or sheep milk, added simple richness to daily meals. Meals were often eaten together, seated on simple stools around a shared table. The evening meal, the cena, was usually the most relaxed meal of the day. Families gathered, sharing food, small news, and easy conversation together. Spices such as pepper and cumin added warmth to otherwise simple dishes. Fruit, figs, grapes, and apples offered a sweet, welcome close to any meal. Honey served as the main sweetener, used in cakes and warm drinks. A meal might end with a shared bowl of fruit, passed slowly around the table. Sharing food was an act of hospitality and welcome, never taken lightly. Guests were offered bread, wine, and a comfortable place to sit and rest. This simple daily ritual quietly bound families and neighbors together, meal after meal. A modest household might stretch a single meal across several careful, thoughtful helpings. Leftovers were rarely wasted, reused gently in the following day's simple cooking. Even a plain supper, shared calmly, was considered a small daily comfort. The table itself, more than the food upon it, was where the family truly gathered. Even during difficult years, families found ways to keep this small ritual alive. A thinner soup or a smaller loaf was still shared with the same quiet care. What mattered most was rarely the size of the meal, but the sitting together. This simple truth held steady across every class, every province, every generation. A wealthy family's table might hold more dishes, but the purpose remained the same. Conversation, laughter, and the simple relief of sitting down together, unchanged. No amount of silver or fine pottery could replace this basic human gathering. It is, perhaps, the one part of Roman life that needs no translation at all. A grandmother from any province would recognize this same warm gathering instantly. Language, custom, and status faded slightly in importance around a shared table. For a short while each evening, a family was simply a family. Nothing more, nothing less. That simplicity, repeated nightly across the whole empire, was its own quiet miracle. The Roman bath and the art of slow rest. Bathing in Roman society meant far more than simple cleanliness. Public baths, the thermae, served as centers of rest, talk, and easy company. Even modest towns kept a small public bath for daily community use. Bathers moved between rooms of differing warmth, cool, mild, and deeply heated. The frigidarium offered a cool plunge, refreshing after a long, warm afternoon. The tepidarium offered a mild, comfortable warmth between the two extremes. The caldarium offered deep heat, easing the body toward complete relaxation. Bathers used small oil flasks, followed by a scraping tool called a strigil. Bath complexes often included gardens and shaded corners for easy conversation. Friends met there regularly, discussing business, family news, and the small events of the day. Bathing was affordable for most citizens, funded with real civic pride. Men and women often bathed at separate hours or in separate designated rooms. Children sometimes came along, playing nearby while the adults talked and rested. An old friend might describe his week slowly, unhurried between one warm room and the next. The sound of water, soft laughter, and slow footsteps filled these spaces. For many Romans, this daily ritual offered a rare, unhurried moment of stillness. It gave tired muscles, tired minds, and tired hearts a chance to settle. This shared, everyday comfort reminds us how deeply rest was valued in Rome. A visit to the baths often marked the true close of the working day. Afterward, a family might walk home together, unhurried, skin still warm from the water. This daily transition from labor to rest felt as natural as the setting sun. It offered, in its own small way, a rehearsal for the deeper rest of night. Skin still warm, muscles finally loose, a person walked home slower than they arrived. Conversation on that walk home often turned soft, unhurried, easily quiet. By the time the family reached their door, the whole day already felt behind them. This daily ritual taught patience as surely as it taught cleanliness. There was no rushing the process, no shortcut through the different heated rooms. A person simply had to move at the pace the baths themselves demanded. Over years, this repeated lesson in patience likely shaped a person's whole temperament. Rest, it turns out, can be taught slowly, one warm afternoon at a time. A traveler new to the city might feel this lesson before understanding it fully. By his third visit, his shoulders had already begun loosening on their own accord. The bath, without saying a word, had already begun teaching him how Romans rested. That perhaps was its quietest and most valuable lesson of all. Even now, the idea of a warm bath before sleep carries some of that same old comfort. Some habits, it seems, are simply too good for any century to fully abandon. Clothing, comfort, and personal care. Roman clothing reflected both practicality and quiet social identity. Most people wore a simple tunic, woven from wool or linen. The toga, long and carefully draped, was reserved mostly for formal occasions. Wearing one correctly required practice, and often the help of a servant. Women typically wore a stola, worn comfortably over a simple tunic underneath. Clothing was often made at home, spun and woven by the women of the family. Wool suited the cooler regions, while linen offered comfort in warmer climates. Sandals were the most common footwear, suited to long days on busy streets. Personal grooming mattered, with real care given to hair and skin. Public baths offered space for washing, oiling, and unhurried personal care. Perfumed oils made from flowers and herbs were used by both men and women. A polished metal mirror allowed for careful, unhurried preparation each morning. Jewelry, though modest for most families, included simple rings, pins, and small charms. Clothing was mended with care, valued for its use rather than its newness. A worn hem was patched carefully, rather than the whole garment discarded. Modesty and neatness were generally respected, reflecting a family's quiet pride. Even simple garments carried meaning, expressing identity and daily practical need. Beneath its social symbolism, Roman clothing stayed grounded in comfort and habit. A favorite tunic, worn soft through years of use, was rarely given up easily. Children often wore clothing handed down from an older sibling, patched and familiar. This quiet thrift reflected a household's steady, practical approach to daily life. Comfort, in the end, mattered more than fashion to most ordinary families. A well-worn cloak, soft from years of use, was often preferred over a new one. It fit the body's shape by then and carried a certain familiar comfort. Wealthier neighbors might notice, but rarely with any real judgment attached. Practicality in most Roman households quietly outranked appearance most days. A tunic chosen for its warmth mattered more than one chosen for its color. Even wealthier families dressed simply for ordinary days, saving finer cloth for festivals. This restraint reflected a broader Roman value placed on moderation and good sense. Excess, when it appeared, was more often the exception than the daily rule. Most families dressed simply not from lack of choice, but from settled, comfortable habit. A finer garment, saved carefully for festivals, felt special precisely because it was rare. Everyday simplicity made those occasional finer moments feel genuinely worth celebrating. Craftsmen, trade, and the working day. Roman cities depended on the steady work of skilled craftsmen and traders. Workshops lined busy streets, filled with the low sound of hammers and looms. Potters shaped clay into jars, bowls, and lamps used in every household. Weavers produced cloth for tunics, blankets, and household coverings. Carpenters built furniture, doors, and wooden fittings for homes both large and small. Bakers worked long, early hours so that fresh bread reached the market each morning. Many trades passed from parent to child, learned through years of patient practice. A typical working day began early and paused during the warmest afternoon hours. Workshops often opened directly onto the street, welcoming curious passers-by. Craftsmen took real pride in their skill, often marking their finished work. Apprentices learned slowly, mastering a trade under a careful, watchful eye. A young apprentice might spend a full season simply learning to hold his tools correctly. Trade extended far beyond the city, connecting distant provinces through shared goods. Ships carried grain, oil, wine, and pottery across calm Mediterranean waters. Merchants traveled long distances by ship and road, often away from home for months. Letters home described safe arrivals, fair trades, and hope for a swift return. This steady economy of skilled labor met the daily needs of the entire empire. Behind every meal, every garment, every home, stood hours of quiet, careful work. A craftsman's reputation was built slowly, one satisfied customer at a time. Neighbors often recommended a trusted tradesman with real, unprompted enthusiasm. This word of mouth mattered more than any sign hung above a workshop door. A steady trade, passed carefully to the next generation, was its own quiet inheritance. A father might place his own worn tools into his son's hands on his first working day. Those same tools might already carry the shape of decades of careful, steady use. The son would learn to hold them the same way, almost without being taught. In this quiet handover, a family's whole history passed simply from palm to palm. Years later, that same son might place the very same tools into his own child's hands. The wood of the handle, worn smooth by 3 generations, would carry that memory silently. No inscription was needed to record this. The tools themselves became the record. Craft passed this way outlived the individual hands that first shaped it. A visitor examining an old tool years later could sometimes trace 3 generations in its wear. The handle worn smooth by a grandfather, the blade resharpened by a father, then a son. Objects cared for this way quietly carried a family's whole working history inside them. A stranger could sometimes tell a family's whole trade just by examining a single worn tool. Work, it seems, leaves its own quiet signature on everything it touches, including the hands themselves. Villas, gardens, and the pleasure of green spaces. Beyond the busy city, many families kept a modest home surrounded by a garden. Wealthier households built villas in the countryside, a retreat from city noise. These villas often combined working farmland with a carefully tended garden. Gardens held fruit trees, herbs, and shaded paths made for a slow afternoon walk. A fountain, where the family could afford one, added the sound of moving water. Even a modest city home might keep a small courtyard garden for fresh herbs. Rosemary, mint, and thyme were grown for both cooking and gentle home remedies. Gardens offered a natural place for conversation, reading, or simply sitting still. Birdsong and warm afternoon light gave these small spaces a restful quality. Villa life often followed the slower rhythm of the farming seasons around it. Families oversaw the planting, the tending, and the daily care of their animals. Children explored the orchards, learning early the patience that growing things requires. Wealthier villas sometimes included a covered walkway, useful in any weather. An afternoon there might pass with little more than reading, resting, and slow talk. Writers often praised country life for its calm, its distance from city noise. Even a simple family plot was loved deeply, tied closely to daily survival. Gardens, grand or humble, offered a living reminder of nature's steady patience. An evening spent among the herbs and fruit trees required no conversation at all. Simply sitting there, listening to birds settle for the night, felt like enough. Many families considered this quiet hour among the most valuable of the day. It asked for nothing and gave back only calm, unhurried company. An old dog might doze nearby, twitching gently through some private dream. The last of the daylight would catch the leaves, turning them briefly golden. No task waited to be finished, no errand needed to be run just yet. For a few minutes, the whole household simply allowed itself to rest. No conversation was needed to justify this pause. It simply happened naturally. Even the most dutiful Roman household understood the value of doing nothing at all. This small daily permission to rest may be one of history's gentlest lessons. It reminds us that productivity was never the only measure of a good day. Farms, seasons, and the rhythm of the land. Agriculture formed the true foundation, economic and emotional, of the Roman world. Wheat, barley, olives, and grapes were among the most widely grown crops. Spring brought planting, summer brought tending, and autumn brought a careful harvest. Winter offered a slower season, kept for repair, rest, and household preparation. Families worked together at harvest, gathering crops before weather could threaten them. Oxen and simple wooden plows helped prepare a field for each new season. Grapes were pressed for wine, and olives pressed for rich, golden oil. Livestock, sheep, goats, and cattle provided milk, wool, and steady labor. Neighbors often helped one another, sharing the heaviest labor of the season. A good harvest brought modest comfort, a poor one brought real hardship. Farmers left small offerings at the household shrine, hoping for a healthy crop. Rural festivals celebrated the planting and the harvest with shared gratitude. A family might sit together after a long harvest day, too tired to speak much. Even city-dwelling Romans stayed closely tied to this steady agricultural rhythm. Warmer months brought long, busy days, and cooler months brought welcome rest. Bread on every table represented countless hours of unseen rural labor. This deep connection to the land shaped a Roman patience built from long experience. The turning of the seasons remained, in truth, the real heartbeat of the empire. A farming family measured their whole year by these familiar, repeating markers. Each season brought its own tasks, its own foods, its own particular comforts. This predictable rhythm offered real reassurance in an otherwise uncertain world. Whatever else changed, the land itself continued its same slow, patient cycle. A grandfather might point out the same field he had planted as a boy himself. His grandson would one day do the same, pointing out that same field to his own child. This continuity, quiet and unremarked upon, connected generations more than any written record. The land remembered in its own way, even when people themselves eventually passed on. A young child sent to fetch water might pause to watch swallows circling low over a ripening field. No one hurried her back. The fields themselves seemed to understand the value of small pauses. Farming, more than any other Roman trade, kept its people close to this unhurried, natural rhythm. It is, perhaps, the oldest lesson in patience that any family ever learned. Act 4, Family and Emotion. Illness, healing, and the family's quiet care. Illness was a familiar, constant presence in households of every social class. Medical understanding was limited, mixing real observation with old, inherited belief. Households kept simple herbal remedies, passed down through family knowledge. Chamomile, mint, and honey soothed minor coughs and everyday discomfort. Physicians existed, though their skill and availability varied greatly by region. Wealthier families sometimes kept a trained physician for ongoing household care. Poorer families relied more on midwives, herbalists, and an experienced elder relative. Rest, warm broth, and a familiar bed were often the truest available medicine. Temples dedicated to healing welcomed visitors seeking both medical and spiritual comfort. Childbirth carried real risk, and a trusted midwife's steady hands mattered enormously. Family gathered close during difficult moments, offering comfort and quiet support. A parent might write, in a careful hand, simply asking after a child's health. A worried mother might sit through the night beside a feverish child's bed. Care for the sick usually fell to the women of the household. Despite limited knowledge, families approached illness with patience and constant devotion. Recovery was never certain, yet comfort and company were reliably, warmly offered. This attentive, everyday care reflects a deeply human response to uncertainty. A neighbor might quietly offer a remedy that had once helped her own family. Such small kindnesses, freely given, formed a real informal safety net for many. Illness, though frightening, was rarely faced by a family completely alone. Community, in this quiet way, softened even the household's hardest days. No family truly faced serious illness entirely alone, not in a close Roman neighborhood. Someone would arrive quietly with food, or simply to sit for an hour. This unspoken duty of care was rarely written down, yet everyone understood it. It was simply what neighbors did for one another, without needing to be asked. This quiet expectation of mutual care shaped how entire streets functioned daily. A family that had once received help would later offer the same, without hesitation. This slow, steady exchange formed an invisible web of support across the city. It rarely appears in any official record, yet it likely saved countless lives. A midwife might be summoned in the middle of the night, arriving still half asleep herself. She worked anyway, her steady hands moving from long habit rather than full wakefulness. By dawn, exhausted but satisfied, she would finally walk home through the quiet, waking streets. The household slave and the complicated truth of Roman life. Any honest account of Roman life must include the presence of enslaved people. Slavery was deeply embedded in Roman society, present in homes of every class. Enslaved individuals performed a wide range of household, farm, and skilled labor. Their experiences varied enormously, shaped by household, region, and individual chance. Some worked in harsh conditions, especially within large agricultural estates. Others lived within a household, sometimes forming long, complicated relationships with the family. Roman law treated them as property, though the social reality was often more layered. Some gained trust and real responsibility inside the households where they lived. Manumission, the formal freeing of an enslaved person, happened with real regularity. A freed person, a libertus, gained certain legal rights, though never full equality. Family bonds among enslaved people existed, despite constant legal and social vulnerability. It is important to view this history honestly, without softening its real hardship. It is equally important to recognize the humanity present within these hard circumstances. Many households depended entirely on enslaved labor for their daily comfort. This dependence shaped nearly every part of Roman domestic and economic life. We include this history not to dwell in sorrow, but to remember it honestly. True understanding of the past requires both its warmth and its harder truths. Some enslaved individuals eventually built new, independent lives after gaining freedom. Their descendants sometimes rose to real standing within later Roman society. These stories, though rare, remind us that history rarely moves in straight lines. We remember all of it honestly, as part of this same complicated human record. A freed craftsman might one day own the very workshop where he once labored. His children might grow up never knowing a life other than this hard-won freedom. These stories, though not always common, remind us that circumstance did not define everyone. History holds both the injustice and the resilience, side by side, honestly. We tell this part of the story slowly and without embellishment, out of respect. Real lives were lived within this hardship, and real humanity survived it. Remembering both truths together is the only honest way to understand this history. We move forward now, carrying that honesty gently with us. It sits quietly alongside the warmth of the family stories we continue to tell tonight. Both truths belong here, side by side, as we return now to gentler things. Soldiers, families, and letters from the frontier. Military service shaped daily life for countless families across the empire. Soldiers often served long terms, stationed far from their original hometowns. Many soldiers formed lasting bonds, even without full legal marriage recognition. Letters between soldiers and their families reveal steady affection despite the distance. A soldier might write calmly of daily routine, of weather, of hoping to return. Families waited, often uncertain when the next letter would finally arrive. Some soldiers carried a small personal token, a reminder of home and family. A worn cloth or a child's drawing might travel with a soldier for years. Frontier postings brought soldiers into contact with unfamiliar lands and customs. Veteran soldiers often received land after service, settling into a quiet farming life. This slow settlement helped spread Roman customs gently across distant regions. Family reunions after long service were remembered with real warmth and relief. Not every soldier returned, and communities carried that quiet grief for years. These simple letters reveal the true emotional cost hidden behind military service. They remind us that behind every campaign stood countless waiting, hopeful families. Even far from home, soldiers longed for the same small comforts as everyone else. A young recruit might carry a small drawing made by his sister before leaving. He would keep it carefully, tucked away, through every long march and quiet camp. Such small, ordinary objects carried enormous private weight during difficult years. They were reminders that home, however distant, was still steadily waiting. At night, in a quiet camp far from any city, a soldier might unfold that drawing. By the low light of a small fire, the lines would already be fading and soft. Still, he would look at it for a long moment before folding it away again. Tomorrow there would be marching, orders, and duty, but tonight there was only this. A quiet fire, a familiar drawing, and the distant, comforting sound of other soldiers talking. For a soldier far from home, even this small stillness counted as a kind of rest. He would sleep eventually, the drawing tucked safely beneath his rolled-up cloak. Morning would come soon enough, but for now there was only this brief, private peace. Around him, other soldiers slept, their own quiet thoughts turned toward their own distant homes. Somewhere far away, wives and mothers were likely doing the very same thing, thinking of them. This shared, unspoken longing connected an entire army to an entire waiting empire. A soldier's return home. Let us imagine, gently, a soldier finally returning home after years away. The road stretches long and familiar, leading slowly toward a remembered village. His steps grow lighter as familiar landmarks come slowly into view. Neighbors notice him first, calling out, spreading word of his safe return. His family gathers quickly, moving toward the road with hopeful excitement. His mother reaches him first, holding him close, tears of relief in her eyes. His wife waits nearby, calm on the surface, though clearly full of feeling. A child he barely remembers approaches carefully, curious about this returning stranger. He kneels down slowly, greeting them in a voice softened by emotion. The family walks home together, unhurried, savoring this long-awaited moment. That evening, the household shares a simple meal, marking his safe return. Neighbors stop by briefly, offering warm greetings before leaving the family in peace. He offers only calm, gentle details, keeping the harder memories to himself. His wife listens, grateful simply for his steady, familiar presence beside her. Later, the couple sits together, saying little, content simply to be close. Outside, the same stars he watched from distant camps now hang over his own roof. Years of distance slowly soften into the shape of an ordinary, familiar routine. Within a season, the household finds its old rhythm again, mostly unchanged. He returns to simple daily tasks, grateful now for their sheer ordinariness. Even chores once considered tiresome now feel like a quiet, welcome privilege. Home, it turns out, was worth every long mile it took to reach it. Some evenings he would simply stand in the doorway, watching his family without a word. No one asked him to explain it, they simply understood and let him watch. In time, even that quiet habit softened into something more easy and settled. The house, slowly, stopped feeling strange and simply felt like his own again. He learned again where each door creaked and which step to avoid in the dark. His wife noticed him relaxing, week by week, into the shape of his old self. Neighbors stopped asking careful questions and simply treated him as always present again. This slow return to the ordinary was, in its own way, the truest kind of homecoming. The elderly and the wisdom of a long life. Growing old in the Roman world carried both real respect and real hardship. Elders were generally honored for their experience and their household wisdom. Grandparents often played an active part in raising the youngest children. Their presence offered stability and steady continuity within the family home. Old age also brought real challenges, including illness and reduced strength. Families were expected to care for elderly relatives, a duty taken seriously. This care reflected deep cultural values around loyalty and quiet gratitude. Many elderly Romans stayed active, offering guidance or light, familiar work. Storytelling remained an important role, passing family history to the young. Grandparents shared memories of simpler times during long, unhurried evenings. Respect for elders was reinforced through both law and deeply rooted custom. Philosophers often encouraged calm acceptance of age rather than fear of it. They suggested a life lived well-brought peace, not dread, at its close. An old grandfather might spend an afternoon simply teaching a grandchild patience. Family closeness remained essential, offering real comfort through life's later years. This steady bond between generations formed a lasting thread through Roman family life. A grandmother's advice was often sought before any major family decision was made. Her long memory held solutions that younger family members had simply never needed before. This accumulated wisdom was treated as a genuine, valuable household resource. In this way, age brought a quiet authority that years alone could not fake. A young mother, uncertain about a fussy infant, might simply ask her own mother first. The answer usually came calmly, often exactly the same advice given once before. This repetition, far from tiresome, offered real comfort in an uncertain moment. Some knowledge, it seems, is only fully trusted once it has been lived through. An elderly neighbor's advice on planting or on illness carried the weight of experience. Younger families often deferred to this wisdom, even when written guidance existed elsewhere. Age, in this quiet way, functioned as its own kind of trusted authority. It could not be studied for, only earned slowly, through years of ordinary living. A young man might listen quietly while his grandfather explained why a decision mattered. He might not fully understand the lesson until many years later, in a similar moment himself. This delayed understanding is, in its own way, one of age's quiet gifts. Wisdom, it seems, often needs to wait patiently for its listener to catch up. By the time that same young man reached old age himself, he understood every word. He would offer the same advice in nearly the same words to his own grandchildren. In this quiet way, wisdom looped gently across generations, always arriving right on time. It never rushed, and it never truly stopped, one grandparent quietly preparing the next. A family seen this way is really just a long, unbroken chain of patient teaching. Neighbors and the bonds of friendship. Friendship mattered deeply within the daily fabric of Roman community life. Neighbors often knew each other well, sharing tools and small daily favors. A borrowed pot or a shared jar of oil strengthened trust between households. Friends gathered casually in courtyards, markets, and along familiar streets. Conversation moved slowly, touching on family news and the small concerns of the day. A true friend was expected to offer honesty, loyalty, and steady support. Letters between friends carried a warmth close to that shared between family. Friends stood by one another through illness, hardship, and the small losses of life. Shared meals were common, offered simply as a sign of ongoing friendship. Children formed early friendships through neighborhood games and shared chores. Trust between neighbors supported both emotional comfort and everyday cooperation. In crowded city apartments, friendship softened the challenges of close, shared living. Two old friends might sit together for an hour, saying very little of importance. Cicero, among others, wrote warmly of friendship as essential to a good life. He believed shared virtue, not simple convenience, formed the truest friendships. These daily bonds softened hardship and added real warmth to ordinary Roman life. A widowed neighbor might find her heaviest chores quietly shared by those nearby. No formal request was needed, only the simple, steady presence of good friends. This kind of unspoken support rarely appears in any official Roman record, yet it likely shaped daily survival as much as any law or institution did. A widow's roof might be quietly repaired by neighbors before the winter rains arrived. No payment was expected, and none was ever really discussed between them. This was simply understood as the ordinary, unremarkable duty of good neighbors. Rome's grandest achievements rested in part on thousands of such small kindnesses. No monument was ever built to honor a borrowed pot or a shared afternoon of childcare. Yet these unrecorded acts likely did more for daily survival than any triumphal arch. It is worth remembering this, quietly, whenever we picture Rome's marble grandeur. Behind every great structure stood countless ordinary people, simply helping one another along. A friend who helped carry water during an illness rarely expected anything in return. The favor was simply returned quietly, whenever the situation eventually reversed itself. This informal balance, kept over years rather than days, held entire streets together. Friendship measured this way was really just patience and generosity practiced daily. A friendship formed in youth might still stand firm decades later, tested many times over. Two old men walking slowly together might say little, needing no words at all. Their long history together spoke clearly enough in the simple fact of the walk itself. Such friendships, quiet and undramatic, were among Rome's most valuable, least celebrated treasures. Death, memory, and the rituals of farewell. Death was a familiar part of daily Roman life, faced by every family eventually. When a family member died, the household observed careful mourning customs. The body was washed and dressed with quiet, careful attention by loved ones. Family gathered close, offering comfort and shared remembrance together. A funeral procession moved through the streets, accompanied by music and mourners. Burial and cremation practices varied by period, region, and family tradition. Tombs were often built along the roads leading out of the city. This placement let passers-by remember the departed as they went about their day. Inscriptions on these tombstones frequently describe the deceased with real warmth. A beloved wife might be remembered simply as faithful, gentle, and cherished. A child might be remembered briefly, with lasting sorrow and quiet affection. Families visited the tombs regularly, bringing flowers and a few spoken words. A festival called parentalia allowed families a structured, shared time of mourning. During it, families shared a meal near the tomb, honoring their ancestors together. This practice reflected a belief that family bonds continued beyond death itself. Grief was expressed openly, yet eased by acceptance and steady religious comfort. Death, though sorrowful, remained woven into the ordinary rhythm of family life. A widow might continue setting a small offering at the shrine for years afterward. This quiet, private gesture required no audience, only her own steady devotion. Grief, handled this way, slowly became something softer, something almost peaceful. The dead were not forgotten, only gently folded into the family's daily rhythm. A father might pause at his own father's tomb on the way to the fields each day. He would say nothing aloud, only pause and then continue on with his mourning. This small habit, repeated for years, kept a quiet thread between the living and the gone. Memory held this gently, asked for nothing but a moment of simple attention. An old grandmother once said that grief eases not because it fades, but because it settles. It becomes part of a person, she said, the way a scar becomes part of skin. That quiet acceptance let ordinary families continue on, gently, after any loss. In time, even sorrow found its place within the family's steady, ongoing life. ACT 5, the Roman night. The sound of the city at dusk. As the afternoon faded, Roman cities settled into a softer evening rhythm. Market stalls slowly closed, vendors packing their goods with practiced, easy motion. Shopkeepers swept their doorways, preparing for the evening ahead. Families began gathering, drawn homeward by the promise of a shared meal. Streets once busy grew quieter, filled with slower, calmer footsteps. Lamps were lit one by one, casting warm light through open doorways. The scent of cooking food drifted through narrow, familiar streets. Children were called home, their voices fading into softer evening tones. Neighbors traded brief, friendly farewells before retreating into their own homes. Public spaces slowly emptied, leaving behind a settling stillness. A watchman began his rounds, offering quiet reassurance through the coming night. Inside, families settled comfortably, sharing food and low, easy conversation. The busy rhythm of daylight slowly gave way to peaceful, restorative rest. This familiar shift marked the boundary between labor and quiet family time. It repeated, night after night, in every corner of the empire. Somewhere, a father set down his tools, wiping his hands slowly on his tunic. Somewhere else, A mother lifted a sleepy child from where he had fallen asleep playing. These small, unremarkable moments repeated endlessly in countless homes, every single evening. Dusk, in its own quiet way, asked the whole city simply to slow down. Even the wealthiest household followed this same daily invitation to rest. No rank or fortune excused a family from the simple pull of evening. In this one small way, dusk treated every Roman household exactly alike. Tomorrow's demands could wait, at least until the sun rose once more. Winter and the comfort of the hearth. Winter brought a slower rhythm to the whole of Roman family life. Cold mornings drew families closer around the warm household hearth. Wool cloaks and heavy blankets offered comfort through the colder months. Farm work slowed, allowing time for rest, repair, and quiet reflection. Families used this season to mend tools, clothing, and household furniture. Evenings grew longer, filled with storytelling and low, comfortable firelight. A warm stew, simmered slowly, offered real comfort on a cold evening. Children spent more time indoors, playing near the family hearth. Grandparents often told their oldest, most familiar stories during these long nights. Saturnalia arrived during this season, bringing festive warmth and welcome rest. Households conserved food carefully, relying on stored grain, oil, and dried fruit. This careful planning reflected patience built from years of seasonal experience. The hearth fire became a quiet symbol of safety and lasting warmth. As winter slowly passed, families looked ahead toward the coming spring. This yearly rhythm brought comfort through change that always felt familiar. A family might spend an entire evening simply listening to the fire settle and crack. No one felt any need to fill the silence with unnecessary conversation. The cold outside made the warmth inside feel even more worth treasuring. Winter, in this quiet way, taught patience as surely as any other season did. By the fire's low light, an old story might be told for perhaps the 100th time. No one minded hearing it again. The familiarity itself was part of its comfort. Outside, the cold pressed against the shutters, but inside, everything felt close and warm. This was winter's quiet gift, a season that asked families simply to stay near one another. A grandmother's kitchen. Let us imagine a grandmother's kitchen inside a modest Roman home. Morning light spreads across worn stone counters and simple clay pots. She rises early, moving slowly, guided by decades of familiar routine. Bread dough rests beneath a woven cloth, rising in the warm air. Herbs hang drying near the window, filling the room with a soft fragrance. Her hands, steady despite her years, move with quiet, practiced ease. Grandchildren wander in, drawn by the comforting smell of baking bread. She hums an old, familiar tune, passed down through many generations. A pot of vegetables simmers, filling the room with warm, comforting steam. She pauses now and then, resting briefly, watching her family move about the room. Stories emerge naturally in these quiet moments, shared while her hands keep working. She recalls her own grandmother's kitchen, remembered fondly across many years. Recipes were rarely written down, passed instead through years of watching and doing. Even simple meals carried real meaning, prepared slowly with real care. As evening comes, the family gathers, drawn by these same familiar smells. This kitchen, though ordinary, held the true, quiet heart of family life. Such kitchens existed across the empire, each filled with the same steady devotion. Long after the meal ends, the warmth from her oven lingers in the quiet room. The grandchildren, full and drowsy, grow quiet themselves, leaning gently against her. She continues humming softly, low enough now that it is almost just breath. This small, ordinary kitchen holds more comfort than any grand hall ever could. No feast in any wealthy villa ever tasted quite like her simple evening stew. That was never really about the food itself, though the food was always good. It was about her hands, her humming, and the decades of care behind every small motion. A kitchen like hers, in some form, waited at the heart of nearly every Roman home. The language of silence and rest. Not every part of Roman life was filled with talk or steady activity. A midday pause allowed families a brief rest during the warmest hours. Gardens offered a place for quiet reflection, away from household noise. Some households valued a quiet hour of reading during a peaceful afternoon. Philosophers believed silence supported clearer, calmer thought than constant conversation. Even a busy market included brief pauses, small islands within a steady day. Evening meals sometimes ended in comfortable stillness rather than more conversation. This comfortable quiet reflected the deep familiarity within a close family. Grandparents often sat for long stretches, simply enjoying familiar surroundings. Silence was not seen as awkward but as a natural part of the day. Prayer, too, often involved quiet, personal reflection rather than spoken words. Even soldiers, amid demanding duty, sought brief moments of stillness and calm. This appreciation for quiet balanced the louder, busier parts of daily life. It allowed families simply to exist together without needing constant words. Rest, even brief, was deeply valued throughout the whole rhythm of Roman life. A family might sit together after dinner, saying nothing at all for a long while. No one felt the need to explain or fill that comfortable, familiar quiet. This shared stillness was its own quiet form of closeness and trust. It asked nothing and offered only rest, breath, and easy togetherness. A house at rest, even briefly, seemed to breathe differently than a house at work. The air itself felt looser, unhurried, content simply to be still for a while. This was a kind of daily rehearsal for the deeper stillness that would follow at night. Let us move gently into that deeper stillness now together. Dreams, sleep, and the Roman night. Night arrived slowly over Rome, marked by fading light and settling stillness. Oil lamps offered a low, flickering glow used carefully to save their fuel. Most households settled early, following the simple rhythm of darkness and rest. A sleeping room was modest, furnished with a simple bed and woven blankets. Wealthier homes sometimes kept a separate room, offering a measure of private rest. Poorer families often slept close together, sharing warmth through the coldest hours. Romans believed dreams carried real meaning, sometimes guidance, sometimes gentle warning. Dream interpretation was taken seriously, discussed calmly within many households. A restless night was eased with a warm drink or a few quiet words of prayer. Streets grew still after dark, though a watchman moved through them for safety. Families often closed their day with soft, low conversation before falling silent. Children were told simple bedtime stories, easing them slowly toward sleep. A parent's low voice repeating a familiar tale was often enough on its own. The story would slow, the details would soften until the child's breathing deepened. Moonlight filtered through small windows, laying soft shapes across the quiet floor. Somewhere outside, a dog barked once, then the street fell silent again. A cart's wheels faded into the distance, and then there was only stillness. The last lamp in the house was allowed to burn low, then lower still. Sleep was considered essential, restoring the body and the mind for morning. In this stillness, a mother checked once more on a sleeping child, then rested herself. A husband and wife lay quietly side by side, sharing warmth and silence. Their thoughts slowed, the day's small worries loosening their hold, one by one. Outside, the whole city seemed to exhale, hills and streets settling into the dark. Even the busiest forum, so loud by day, lay completely empty and still. Above it all, the same moon that watches you now once watched over Rome. It watched over tired hands, full stomachs, and hearts finally at rest. As the last lamp faded, the house grew dark, warm, and completely still. Let that same stillness settle now around you as you continue listening. There is nothing left to do tonight, nothing left to hold, only rest. Somewhere beneath these same stars, a Roman family once slept exactly as you do now. Their worries had softened by this hour, folded quietly away until morning. Let your own worries fold away too, gently, one by one for now. There is only this moment, this breath, and the slow pull toward sleep. Nothing more is asked of you tonight, nothing at all. Act 6 closing. A village wedding remembered. Let us imagine, one last time, a small wedding in a quiet Roman village. Morning arrives softly, warm light spreading slowly across modest stone rooftops. The bride wakes early, helped by her mother and her closest female relatives. Her hair is divided carefully into 6 traditional, symbolic sections. She dresses in a simple white tunic, tied with the knot of Hercules. A soft orange veil is placed over her hair, marking this new beginning. Neighbors gather outside, offering warm smiles and quiet words of encouragement. A small household altar is prepared, decorated simply with flowers. Family members offer a short prayer, asking for health and lasting happiness. A modest feast follows, shared among family, neighbors, and close friends. Music plays low in the background, accompanying easy talk and quiet laughter. As the afternoon light softens, the bride is led toward her new home. At the doorway, she is welcomed carefully, marking her new life and household. The evening settles quietly, filled with warmth, gratitude, and simple celebration. Long after the empire faded, such an ordinary joy remains easy to imagine. Two families, joined now by this small ceremony, would share holidays for the rest of their lives. Grandchildren not yet born would one day hear this wedding described, softened gently by memory. This is how a single afternoon quietly becomes part of a family's lasting story. The old olive tree. In a quiet farming village, an old olive tree stood beside a modest home. Its branches, silver green, had grown slowly across many decades. The family who tended it had cared for its roots across several generations. Each autumn, they gathered beneath it to collect the ripened olives. Children climbed its lower limbs, laughing softly beneath the dappled light. Grandparents rested nearby, remembering their own childhood beneath that same tree. It had witnessed countless family meals, shared calmly in its cooling shade. Its oil supported the family's cooking, lighting, and daily needs for generations. The tree became a quiet symbol of patience and of steady endurance. Elders often compared it to family life, strong slowly through years of care. They explained that, like the tree, a family grows strong through steady attention. In many ways, it mirrored the quiet resilience of the family itself. Such trees, humble yet lasting, quietly outlasted empires, seasons, and centuries. Long after the family itself was gone, someone else's children still played beneath it. The tree never asked whose hands tended it, only that someone, eventually, always did. Perhaps that quiet indifference to ownership is part of what made it feel so peaceful. One final walk through the forum. Let us walk once more slowly through the heart of an old Roman city. Morning light spreads across worn stone, softened by centuries of quiet footsteps. Market stalls are opening slowly, filled with familiar, comforting sound. A baker calls out gently, offering fresh bread still warm from the oven. A mother guides her small child carefully through the gathering morning crowd. An old man rests on a stone bench, watching the city slowly wake. Two friends greet each other warmly, pausing for a few quiet words. The scent of bread, oil, and fresh herbs drifts softly through the air. Children run past, laughing, chasing each other around the old stone columns. This is not a story of conquest, only of an ordinary, unhurried morning. Behind every doorway lies a family, a routine, a small, familiar history. Empires rise and fade, yet mornings like this quietly continued again and again. As we leave this scene, let us carry its calm rhythm gently with us. The bread will still be warm tomorrow. The friends will still greet each other kindly. Rome, in this quiet sense, never really vanished. It simply changed its shape. The quiet legacy of ordinary hands. Most Romans never held office or commanded armies or built great temples. Instead, they baked bread, wove cloth, tended fields, and raised their children. Their names rarely survive, yet their quiet effort shaped an entire civilization. A farmer's labor supported cities he would likely never visit himself. A weaver's careful work clothed generations she would never fully know. A mother's patient teaching shaped values carried forward for many years to come. This quiet legacy deserves gentle remembrance alongside history's more famous names. Ordinary life, patiently lived, remains history's truest and most lasting foundation. This truth connects us softly to those distant, quiet Roman households. Their steady, patient humanity still speaks quietly across all these centuries. As you rest now, let that quiet voice be the last thing you hear tonight. Somewhere, a version of that same quiet devotion continues even now, in your own life. It asks only patience, presence, and the willingness to care for ordinary daily things. Closing, a quiet farewell. Our walk through this hidden side of Rome comes gently to its end. We began beside a small river settlement and we return there once more. Inside a modest home, a family rests together, warm, safe, and content. We have visited kitchens, gardens, weddings, and the quiet comfort of an old age shared. We have listened to soldiers, midwives, and grandmothers within warm, familiar kitchens. Love found its way through small gestures, and grief was eased by gathered family. This shared humanity connects us softly across thousands of years and countless miles. There is comfort in this continuity, in knowing our lives echo something lasting. As you rest now, let the scent of warm bread linger a little longer. Let the quiet warmth of a shared table ease whatever the day has left behind. There is nothing more to remember tonight, nothing more to hold, only rest. The old roads continue on, unchanging, carrying their story softly into the night. Let them carry you now, slowly, toward deep and full and peaceful sleep. Rest well, exactly as countless Roman families once did beneath that same quiet sky. Good night.